Hi, in this video we're going to talk about reshaping our data. This is the situation that we want to address with this video, is where we have all the data we need, but it's not formatted the way that we can use. So something that will happen is that a lot of times you'll get time series data that will have a time series corresponds to each row and time corresponds to each column. Well, that's what's called a wide format. If I'm going to be using something like ggplot or a function with a lot of filters on it, then what I'm frequently going to want to be using is a format that's called long format, where each row corresponds to like an observation, not a subject, and each column corresponds to an aspect of that single measurement. And these are very important. Some formats are better for some functions, some formats are better for other functions. In general, my experience is that the wide format is the better one for humans to be able to read, but the format that is good for humans to read is usually pretty bad for analytics. So what we need to be able to do, we need to be able to go back and forth between these, and we need to be able to do it without losing any data, without losing any information. Now, when I say wide format, what I'm meaning is that wide format has a larger number of columns. Long format has very few columns and a lot more rows. So that way we have, but we still have the same amount of data between the two formats. Alright, so let's first and foremost, let's go ahead and load an example. Now this is a ridiculously simple example. I came up with this just so that we can see the principles, and I want this to be small and easy for us to follow. Please take a good hard look at it. This is all fictional data. I made it up. So we can see that each row corresponds to a student, and the students have names of their letters in the alphabet. And then there's a test administration 1, test administration 2, and we can see which test they took and the score, which test they took and the score. Now, in this format, we really can't use this for very many things. This is a good format for humans to read and to look at, but I really can't do any visualizations on it. I can't do really any analysis on it. So I'm going to need to start working some stuff out. You notice I've got math and English together. I've got social studies and science together. I don't want to be mixing these types of data together. So I'm going to need to reshape this into another format. So now this is, I would call this a wide format on the data because each subject corresponds to a row. Now, when we say long and wide format, that will depend on our what data we have and what is the purpose of our analysis. Wide and long format are kind of like a grayscale aspect of how many. So each field, each pair of fields can be converted to a wide format or a long format, depending on how I'm looking, or depending on the format it's in. And so, sometimes with my analysis, I'll need almost all of them to be in wide, or almost all of the fields to be in long format. Sometimes I'll only need a few, and where's the sweet spot will depend on my analysis that I'm going to be running. Alright, so what I'm going to do for this, I'm going to break up the data into test administrations. So you notice that first and foremost, I keep my ID variable in both of the data sets. And then I take the test administration 1 subject and the score from administration 1. I get this new subset of data. I do the same thing for test administration 2. Notice that I keep the ID variable on there. Okay, so now what I want to do, I want to convert this into a wide format. So I'm only going to look at the test administration 1 data. I'm going to spread it out. So what I've done so far is I broke up my administrations into different data sets, because really these are two different data sets, even though they conceptually are similar and they're dealing with the same subjects. All right, so let's take a look at what happens. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the data and I'm going to spread out. So what I've got is I've got a subject and the score that they earned. Now, what I'm using the tidyr package. This is part of the tidyverse. This is a very useful, very easy way to reshape your data. R has tons and tons of ways to accomplish this. I find that the tidyverse way for this problem is the easiest and fastest way to do it. Something that is important to notice is that I do not have quotations around the column names. This is very important because all right, so in the tidyverse, since these are already established in the column names, I don't have quotations around them. And when I spread them out, you'll notice now I've got each student's English and math scores in different columns. So now in this format, each student is a row and their score on a particular test is the column. All right, let's do this again. Let's spread out test administration 2 data. All right, so once again, students correspond to rows, and science is its own column, social studies is its own column. All right, so I've got the 2 test administrations broken apart, and I've got it set up so that now the columns are corresponding to the subject. Well, I would like to combine these. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put them together using a merge statement, and I'm going to merge on my ID variable. And when I do that, now I have every single student's individual scores for the different subjects. All right, so this is looking good. Look, so here, all of these columns, these 4 columns, and these scores correspond to 2 fields. They correspond to the subject and the score that they earned. Those are the 2 fields that are stored in this part of my data. All right, so this is my wide format, and you'll notice this is pretty clean, and I can easily read off what a student got for each individual subject test. Well, now what I want to do, this is wide format, I want to put this into long format. So what I want to do, I want to make it so that I have a column for student, I have a column for subject, and then I have a column for score. Right, that will be a better format for me if I want to do something like ggplot, for example. This format is very good if I want to analyze English by itself, or math by itself, science by itself, or social studies by itself, or the correlations between these. But for a lot of visualizations, this is not a very good format if I want to look at all of them at the same time using like faucets. So let's take a look. I'm going to go back up here. Alright, so what I'm going to use, the gather function and the tidyr package. My data is the spread out data. Now here, I'm going to say that the column names correspond to the subject, and I'm going to say that the values that are in those cells go into the column called score. Now, an important point with the tidyverse gather function. You'll notice that the term subject does not appear anywhere in here, and the term score do not appear anywhere in here. Anytime you use the reshaping functions, if you are using a term that does not already appear in the data set, you have to put it in quotations as a character string, as I have it here and I have it here. Now, you'll notice that when I do this, there's going to be combinations where like students did not take English, and so if a student did not take the English test, then it's going to be a missing value. All right, so so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and remove missing values from from the format. That way I don't have extra stuff floating around. And now here, you'll notice that these are not being set equal to any parameters. These are kind of just called out floating in the gather statement. Since these are floating in the gather statement, these are going to be picked up as being the columns that you want to reshape. You notice that my ID variable is not included in here. I want to leave the ID variable alone as is, and I want to convert these 4 columns into 2 columns with subject and score, and student gets left alone. If I had more columns that I wanted to be left alone, I would just not include them as I have it here. All right, now let's take a look at how it turns out. All right, so now you'll see that I've got student, I've got subject, I got score, and you'll notice that since I told it to remove missing values, it did. If I would not have specified that, I would have had a bunch of missing values included, which may or may not be a problem for the project that I'm on. All right, so something about this, when I have this format, when I've got these 2 columns, when I have a key and a value column, key for this one is the subject, the value is the actual score, I can go back and forth between these two. I can go from wide to long, and I can go from long to wide. I want to demonstrate that now. And if you go through and you look, you'll notice that it's in the correct order as it was before. Now, if I go back and forth and I'm reordering things, I'm changing from long to wide or wide to long, the order may change on your stuff, but the actual data itself will stay the same. Now, you'll notice something about this is that which administration was the test taken at was completely lost. That's gone. That information is not there anymore. If I look at my original data, I knew that the administration, first administration was math and English. The second administration was social studies and science. I've completely lost that from my data set in these formats. All right, so how do I deal with that? This is a problem that I have to deal with a lot. If you look through the literature online about how to reshape data, this is an aspect that is not talked about a lot, where you have really multiple data sets being put together into a wide format. And this is something I deal with all the time, because specifically with test administrations, since I'm working in education. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable that specifies which administration it is. All right, so before I do that though, I take the test 1 data set, I change the column names to be something that's a little bit more informative to what's going on, and I make sure that they're the same on both of them, because I'm going to put this in long format. In a moment, I'm going to append these data sets. I'm going to put one on top of the other. I put a 1 if it's for administration 1. I put a 2 if it's for administration 2. And now I use the dplyR's bind rows function to append the data sets together. I put all of the test 1 observations on top of the test 2 observations. So now let's scroll down. And that's what that looks like. Now, this is what's called tidy data. This is the format that you would want to use if you're using ggplot, which is a very powerful graphics platform. I strongly recommend you take a look at it. I don't think we'll have time to really dig into it. I'd like to, but I really think you should take a good hard look. Please let me know if you have any questions, you need help, and stay healthy.